and good day. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who are listening live, it's webcast1live.com, webcast1live.com. And for those of you who are listening on air, I think this is our inaugural show on 99.3. Thanks for joining us. And you're joining us on a Sunday on your way home from church, maybe your way out to dinner. So thanks for taking time to join us. The show, like I said, is live each Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. If you want to join in the conversation, phone calls are 515-244-0077. And if you want to just follow along, that's great. Ryan, our producer, also has a chat line at that time at the live o'clock spot as well for those of you who like to interact. And I know there are those activists out there who often give us great information during the show. So thanks for staying with us. We always have information. The show is called Truth for Our Time. What we do is help you live God's word in today's world. Because if he expects you to live through it, he has directed you how to do it. And so we're always pleased to be able to bring you good information that you can use when the headlines hit home. We offer you help. Joining me first today is Jim Simpson. And many of you heard him on another network in Central Iowa on Tuesday. And you were so taken. I got so many phone calls. I asked Jim, I actually begged Jim, can't you please finish and do another interview with me on this network? And he was kind enough to give us that time. So I'm going to jump right to him, not go with the announcements and those things that I usually talk about at the beginning of the show. We want to get right to Jim. So Jim Simpson, thank you for taking time out again today to join me.
Oh, my pleasure, Tamara.
So we had you on. So our listeners know, Donald Trump was in Iowa recently. I had the honor of emceeing that event as National Committee Woman for the Republican Party. And at that event, he made the comment that 80% of women crossing the border illegally are often subject to rape and violent crime, sexual assault. And when he said that, I work in human trafficking. Our second guest today will be Dr. Teresa Downing talking about trafficking here in Iowa. And I thought, I hope he has a source for that. I hope he's not just throwing that figure out there that will hurt our cause. Well, sure enough, 2 days later on Bill Riley, I think it was the Bill Riley show, when he was questioned about this, he said not only was that a correct source, fact, but he mentioned the source where he got it. And if all of you remember, he's been told that Univision will not air his pageant because of the comments he's made that are not flattering towards immigration. What I thought was so, I don't know, call it humorous, political justice, I don't know. But here's what he said. I can cite that source. I got it from a TV or a radio station from Univision. So here the group that's banning his pageant because they don't like what he's saying, what he said came from one of their networks. So I find that, a little bit full of irony. And here's the beauty of Jim, of Trump being in this race, whether we like everything he stands for or we don't. And I'm not saying I do. I'm neutral as National Committee woman. But here's the beauty of the process. And we are so blessed in Iowa to have the primary caucus happening here. We have the ability to ask questions. We have the ability to seek solutions, not just listen to slogans. And a handshake is what we look for rather than a soundbite. And so no matter who your candidate is, having so many candidates in the race, the issues that matter surface and give us dialogue. And here's one of the other reasons I wanted to talk to Jim and ask about immigration. 2 days later, in that same week, a local county supervisor was on WHO, a local radio station, made the comment that anybody who was going to push the idea of enforcing immigration laws in this country would not do well in the Republican primary. And I had to laugh again because Trump at that point was polling second, not just in Iowa, but in the nation. So the people care. Americans, Iowans are concerned about their safety and they want to uphold the Constitution. So Jim, the reason I called you, you were given your name was given to me as an expert on immigration by the Center for Security Policy. And I thank you for sharing the information that you have given to us. And we look forward to sharing it with this audience today. Is Donald Trump right when he talks about immigration?
Well, let me just quote directly from the article. It's in an article on a website called fusion.net, where, interestingly, there's another article from a Hispanic man who's very critical of our immigration, the fact that we don't have more open borders and that we're not more welcoming. And but here's what it says. The title of the piece is Rape the Price to Pay for Migrant Women Chasing the American Dream? And then it says the second line in this article, a staggering 80% of Central American girls and women crossing Mexico en route to the United States are raped along the way, according to directors of migrant shelters interviewed by Fusion. So,
And that's by a gentleman who wants more open borders.
Well, I'm not sure if where the writer of this particular article stands, but there are other articles on this very same site that are very, very pro-immigration. And I saw one when I was looking at it yesterday, a man who was hypercritical of Trump for his statement. So it's pretty funny that they should both be held on the same website. And, here it is, America with George Ramos. That's it. George Ramos, one of the most influential journalists of the day.
And so here's the deal.
Yeah.
I find it amazing that pundits, newscasters, the media, and even candidates challenging Trump in the primary are coming out against his words on immigration when all he's simply doing is upholding the Constitution and wanting to protect this nation with borders. And each of them, if they are elected, will take an oath of office to protect the citizenry. That's not everybody in the world. That's the citizenry. Voters, residents in this country legally.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's in my mind, it's even silly that we even have to have it would be silly if it wasn't so horrifying that we actually have to have this conversation. The United States is a nation that has prospered because it has been run under the rule of law, and allowing people to flagrantly and systematically violate the law undermines the legitimacy of the law. So you don't need to go any further than that, but we can go so much further than that. The illegal aliens that cross the border, as we described yesterday, some of them are indeed people just looking for a better life. Now, legal immigrants come that way too, but they actually have to wait through the process. They have to pay a lot, and they take a lot of time, and we welcome them with open arms.
Yes, and we admit that legal system does need some revising. It shouldn't take 10 years, $10,000.
It shouldn't take 10 years, $10,000. And I'm willing to bet most people don't know that we allow in 1 million people a year legally. 1 million. And so, and after Teddy Kennedy got the Immigration and Naturalization Act passed in 1965, the complexion of those immigrants radically changed. We had previously been selective about who we would let in based on our assessment of whether or not they would actually contribute to our country or not. And but Kennedy's calculation was to bring in people from all over the country without discrimination, deliberately, so that we could get low-income people that could be made dependent on the government or would come here because of government benefits that could then become reliable Democrats, because the Democrats are perceived as the ones who promote, these government-sponsored welfare programs.
The social justice, yes. The misuse of social justice and
The misuse,
misinterpretation.
the absolute misuse. And, and I describe in my as yet unpublished book, which probably won't be out till next year, but I have a chapter on it's called Weaponizing the Poor. And, the left's goal in creating welfare was not to liberate the poor. It was to make them more dependent on the government. And we can see every single statistic about welfare proves that to be true. And as far back as 1965, Daniel Patrick Moynihan was warning the nation of the deleterious impacts welfare was having on the black nuclear family, which was the biggest source of strength and the biggest source of stability for inner city blacks up to that point, and it was being destroyed systematically by welfare through the disincentive effects of welfare. And so as a result, we now have inner cities that are cesspools of crimes, prostitution, and drugs, and that is a direct consequence of a society, of a segment of society that no longer is required to be responsible for itself.
Because entitlements entangle. It's as simple as that. It doesn't help you out. It pins you in where you're at, and you'll never be able to rise financially past what the government tells you are capable of.
That's exactly right. As an economist, I'm an economist. As an economist, one of the fundamental concepts is the fact that people are risk averse. And when you put people who are on the margins of society to begin with in a position where they have to choose between going out and finding work in an atmosphere where they have very few skills and very few prospects of getting high-paying jobs at first, and give them the option to take welfare instead, where they don't have to take those risks, people inevitably, unerringly choose the easier way. It's human nature. And the left understood this. Cloward and Piven, Richard Cloward's welfare program in the Bronx was the model that Lyndon Johnson used for his Great Society program. And Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven created something called this crisis strategy. And their idea was not, they thought welfare was, as I say, a opiate. And their goal was to destroy it. And ironically, however, their method for destroying it was to put as many people on it as they could possibly get, because it would collapse. And in the ensuing chaos and the violent reaction the inner city would have because their benefits were being denied, Cloward and Piven hoped to initiate a blazing street revolution. So their idea was to use inner city blacks, make them poor, get them onto the welfare rolls, make them dependent on it, and then when it collapsed, they would become cannon fodder in the revolution. That's what the left thinks about inner city blacks, and that's how they've been used these past 50 years, while at the same time they're being provoked by our leftist president and radical left attorney general to believe that whites are responsible for all their problems, when it's really not. It's the left, and the left's spokesperson and figurehead today is the President of the United States. Never more malevolent person elected in this country ever.
And Jim, we've got to go to a break right here, but when we come back, I want to discuss some of the statistics that you have available for us. Jim Simpson is my guest today. You can find him at crisisnow.net, crisisnow.net. We'll be right back after these messages, and thank you for staying tuned with us. We thank our sponsors, Christians for America, and Webcast One Live.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah!
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And you're listening to Tamara Scott Live with Truth for Our Time. And if you want information, Jim's going to give you great statistics today. And I know if this goes like our previous interviews, you're going to be wanting some of those statistics and the ability to review them for yourself. I've got several of his links on Truth for Our Time Facebook page, Truth for Our Time Facebook page, and as well, archives are available at Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. Tamara Scott Live on YouTube, and the website tamarascott.com is so close to being done, thanks to Ryan, my producer, and he's waiting on me, as you can imagine. So we'll try and get that up for you very quickly as well. Jim Simpson, crisisnow.net. He is an investigative journalist, a researcher, an economist. As you can tell, he has a wide variety of experience, as what usually happens when you're in the field of journalism. So, Jim, thank you so much for taking time out to join us again. The statistics that we're talking about immigration, and it's not that we have hateful hearts or that we're biased against anyone else. As a Christian, and this show goes out to a lot of Christian listeners, we have an obligation to do what is the right and just thing. We're told to always act justly, walk in love, and be humble. And so the problem is when you bring people in without being able to care for them, you put everyone at danger. When you bring them in, when you allow them to come in illegally as a Christian, you're enticing them to sin, which I don't find that as being a positive role for Christians either. And now I hear this new movement amongst Christians, some pastors saying that this is a group we can witness to and get saved, and that's absolutely true. So is the prison ministry, so is the Bronx, the inner cities, the gangs. So we don't have to allow somebody to break the law before we can minister to them. And that's not an excuse to allow or entice somebody to break the law. And Jim, the reason we feel that way is because some of the dangerous issues that you let us in on. Tell us some of the statistics that you were you were justifying Trump's comments with illegal aliens.
Well, first, let me react to that statement that you can evangelize these people. You know, the voluntary agencies, 6 of 9 of which are nominally religious, Jewish, Catholic, and evangelical, they are prohibited by law. And I actually interviewed a gentleman from South Carolina who's very big on promoting resettling refugees in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and he told me that one of the great opportunities that Christians had was to evangelize these people while they were assisting them in resettling. And those agencies are prevented by federal law from evangelizing anyone. So they're not allowed to say a thing about religion. They're not allowed. So the fact of the matter is the man knows this fact. He was lying to me. These voluntary agencies that come under religious headings are nothing more than federal contractors making billions of dollars a year resettling third world refugees, asylum seekers, and illegal aliens, many of which have no interest in assimilation, and some have very malevolent intentions for the United States, especially those being resettled from Muslim countries. But going back to Donald Trump's statement, you know, the General Accounting Office, or I guess it's called the Government Accountability Office now. When I was in the government, it was the General Accounting Office, did a 2011 study of criminal aliens. And they chose 5 states, New York, California, Texas, Arizona, and Florida, all big illegal alien states. And I chose, they went through a whole list of crimes these people had committed, and I picked out murder and sex offenses because they were just so incredibly over the top. And as I told you yesterday, these are all based on 2008 statistics. Murder convictions in New York of criminal illegal aliens were 1,168 in 2008. The state's total murders in 2008 were 835. So the murder convictions of illegal aliens in that year were greater than the total number of murders committed that year. And I mean, you ask that can't make any sense. Well, of course it does, because the convictions may not have been based on arrests from that year. They probably went back 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 years. So I went and said, okay, so let's take a look at the past 3 years. In New York, there were 2,609 murders committed in the previous 3 years, 2005, 2007, compared with the alien convictions in 2008 of 1,168. That's 44% of the total 3-year total murders in New York State. 44% of the convictions in 1 year were equal to 44% of the 3-year total of murders in New York. And there were similar figures, huge figures, in California. The state total for 2008 was 2,000 2,143 murders. There were 2,895 murder convictions of illegal aliens in 2008. That's 135% of the total. In Texas, it was 68% of the total. In Arizona, it was 80% of the total. In Florida, it was 150% of the total. And when you go to 3-year rates, same thing. California, 40%, Texas, 22%, Arizona, 24%, Florida, 55%. The average overall, 38% of the alien convictions in 2008 were 38% of all the murders committed between 2005 and 2007 for those 5 states. And then you go to the sex offenses, and that's over the top also. In California, the state total of sex offenses in 2008 was 8,900. Aliens convicted that year were 3,325. That's 37% of the total sex offenses committed in that year. It's just astounding. In Florida, it was 49.7%. And then we went to the child rape convictions in North Carolina. For some reason, North Carolina just has an incredibly huge problem with illegal aliens. In 2014, there were 752 arrests for some form of sexual offense against a child. There were, for those 752 arrests, there were 3,695 charges, about 5 charges per arrest on average. Now, the total number of forcible rapes in 2013, which is the latest year for which that data is available, total, that's adults and children, was 1,821. So we're looking at people arrested in 2014, which represent about 41% of the total rape cases that occurred in 2013. It's just incomprehensible. And the newly Republican majority in the North Carolina State House, along with the governor, had the audacity to pass a law providing driver's licenses for illegal aliens. It's just incredible.
Okay, I'm trying to write down these statistics as quickly as you're saying them, and I've now heard it twice, and I'm still astounded. For our listeners and our viewers who want this information, where can they find it, Jim?
Well, I'll tell you what I do. This stuff is coming out of my book that I have not published yet, but what I'll do is I will take these statistics. You have crisisnow.net on your website, I believe, but for your listeners, www.crisisnow.net. That takes you, it's a portal that will take you to my examiner.com website, and I don't have a direct link to that because it is such a convoluted URL. It's impossible to try to describe. So I just have this portal, crisisnow.net. So that will take you to my articles about manufactured crisis on the Examiner site, but all you have to do is click on my name, and that'll take you to my homepage. And I will post these statistics today on the homepage. I will post them there. After we get done, I will get right online, and I will post these statistics, and people can see them for themselves. It's just incredible. And this data from the GAO, I had to twist their arm to get it because it was unpublished data.
Unpublished and unpopular.
Extremely unpopular. It's unbelievable. So, if anything, Donald Trump was not exaggerating the problem at all. You know, the people that come in illegally into this country illegally, like I said earlier, sometimes they have very compelling stories. That is not an excuse for them to commit crime. We have enough problems of our own without having to deal with the rest rest of the world's problems, largely created by the failed states in those countries, and we shouldn't be subsidizing that implicitly by taking all their problems off their hands. But even more to the point, many of the people that cross the border illegally do so because they're people that country just doesn't want. And they're coming over here because there's greener pastures over here. They can have an easier time committing crime over here. We have a legal system that is much more favorable to the defendant than, for example, Mexico, where a lot of these child rapists wouldn't last a week in a Mexico prison. And so they come here instead, and that's a big part of the problem. We are attracting all kinds of very, very bad people by our loose immigration policies and our open borders policies being promoted by this, as far as I'm concerned, treasonous president.
And so even if we had the most compassionate heart and we brought and we allowed the very best of other nations to come here, maybe it's not the ones you're saying that are dangerous. And we're not saying everyone who crosses the border is a criminal. We're not saying that by any means. But say they are the best of the best coming because their countries are bad. Here's the deal. We have the freedoms and liberties we have in this country because we allowed our forefathers, our ancestors. They fought. They risked it all. They gave, and oftentimes the ultimate price, to ensure the inalienable rights that we have endowed by our Creator. And the fact that this country was built upon that very premise that we recognized a providence, a supreme being, mentioned 4 times in our Declaration, in one way or another. We honored the God who we felt gave us the protection to start this country and to bless this country. So we put blood on the line to give the liberties we have. And so we can't allow others not to do the same in their country, or we bring those wars here. We've got to go to break right now. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. Tamara Scott with Truth for Our Time.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing. We have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Thanks for staying tuned. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Tamara Scott Live with Truth for Our Time, and we welcome 99.3 listeners joining us this Sunday at noon. If you want to see the show live, you can join us every Wednesday, 10 a.m., webcast1live.com. We thank our friends at Webcast One Live. Beautiful new studio. We thank Mac McCoy for all he does to help us along in the show, and Christians for America. Christians reviving American values every day. Crave. Christians for America. We thank our sponsors for coming alongside and making it possible for us to do this show and other ministries that I get to be a part of. Jim Simpson has been my guest. Jim is an economist, a research author, journalist, investigative journalist. He's also an author. He's written a book, Red Green, the Refugees, Immigration, and Erasing of America. So, Jim, thank you so much for the information you've given us. We'll look forward to crisisnow.net, having our listeners and our viewers be able to go there and find the statistics that you've shared with us. And joining me for my next segment is Dr. Teresa Downing. Dr. Teresa Downing is an ISU, Iowa State University professor. She is a professor in sociology, but she's also the executive director of a network against human trafficking. And so, Jim, I thought it was just perfect that two of you are on today, both of you talking about the impact, one, of unlawful immigration into this country and the dangers that it brings. And I did a show, gosh, Ryan, I don't know if you remember, about 2 years ago. We did a show on illegal immigration and the dangers to women and children, and Right Wing Watch just had an absolute heyday. But, Jim, what you're saying is kids and women crossing the border are at risk for sexual assault.
Well, I didn't say it. This other article very explicitly said it, and they're right. They're right, because there is, well, for one thing, the Mexican and I believe Central American male mindset towards women is a lot more, could be a lot more easily compared with that of Muslim men than, say, Americans. That is to say, women are considered second-class citizens by a lot, and I will not say all, because
right.
I know there are very many decent, folks, Latino folks from all those countries, very highly competent and highly principled people. But I have to say that, in the lower classes anyway, it's not the case, and especially in terms of, we hear all kinds of stories all the time, and they're published in the media about illegal aliens in California and Texas committing brutal sex crimes against children. I mean, there are a number of cases in California where illegal aliens have kidnapped, raped, and murdered little girls. I mean, it's just awful stuff. But in Mexico, sleeping with a 13-year-old is considered to be okay in a lot of circles. So it's a whole different cultural attitude towards youth in terms of sexuality than we have here, and it doesn't explain away the statistics that I mentioned earlier, but it suggests a problem with that culture that is more prevalent in that culture than it is here, though admittedly we all have problems in that area.
All right. So, Jim, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. I appreciate your ability to research, to dig in, to find the facts, and then put them in a usable form for the rest of us to be able to understand. If you want more information, Jim Simpson, you can find him at crisisnow.net. You can also, at that website, then go through a couple of different portals. And like he said, on his Examiner link, he'll put the statistics of those he shared with us today on air. So, Jim, thank you so much. And we look forward to you coming back another time as a guest.
Thanks for having me, Tamara. I'll be putting that information up now.
All right. So in studio with me is Dr. Teresa Downing. Dr. Teresa Downing is the executive director of Network Against Human Trafficking. And Teresa and I met on human trafficking conferences and preventing abuse conferences with Tony Nassif. And we go to these meetings, and by Gumby, Teresa didn't just go, she did something. You started the Network Against Human Trafficking right here in Iowa.
That was founded by Alejandro Orozco, and then he transitioned over to his work as a banker and community development officer.
That's
and
a switch.
Handed it over to me.
Wow. There's a career change for you.
Absolutely.
So you've been doing this for how long?
I have been working with the network for a little over 5 years now, Tamara.
Okay. So when we are talking about sex crimes in Iowa, we're talking whether it's illegal alien or sex crimes against kids or human trafficking, prostitution. Mm-hmm. People don't think it happens here in our state. Are they correct?
No, actually, sex crimes against children and human trafficking are quite prevalent in Iowa. If we look at the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force webpage, we will see that we are consistently trying to find children who are exploited through child pornography in Iowa, and that is an escalating crime here and everywhere. And then every day we have hundreds of ads for young people, including youth, who are for sale as escorts, which is a form of prostitution and trafficking here in Iowa as well.
And in May, we had our last conference, and the May 1st, I think it hit the newspapers that an Iowa couple from Clive had been arrested in Virginia. Mm-hmm. They had kidnapped a young lady in their motorhome, and I think they had tortured her as well, and were selling her, using her for sex crimes. And we also then had the story that didn't make much news. A young lady was meeting a gentleman in a parking lot of a fast food restaurant in Ankeny. Someone passing by just didn't think it looked normal, called the authorities, which I thought was really odd. I don't know what doesn't look normal about a young girl meeting with an older man. I would have assumed it was grandpa or whatever. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they called. Turned out she had met him on a site, chatting, and decided to meet him in person. And here was this individual. I think he was from Virginia or out east as well. Mm-hmm. So there are all kinds of dangers facing our kids today that I think many parents here in America, some of them listening on their way home from church, think they don't have to address. You know differently.
That is very true. And I think, Tamara, that parents need to be more aware of the fact that their children and young adults, children even, are at risk of being trafficked through the internet. Some traffickers these days have become so adept at using the internet to recruit people into the sex trade that they have been able to control their victims from out of state just using social media technology. And to some extent, that out-of-state control is exacted over young people because of threats that the traffickers are able to make against their families or loved ones.
We just find that almost impossible to believe. They're not even in the same state, but they've got these kids so convinced that they'll do harm to a sister or a brother or a parent if they don't do what they're told.
Exactly. Or sometimes they get the children or adolescents or young adults to post revealing pictures of themselves online, and then they will use extortion and threaten to post those pictures all over the internet or send them to their families if they don't cooperate.
So we're going to go to a break here, but where could people go where they could find information from you? We'll come back after the break and we'll have more with Teresa Downing, but quickly, is there a website or a email where people could find you?
Yes, we have a network. It's www.iowanAHT.org. And you may also reach me at my email, downingterry@gmail.com, and I will post that for you, Tamara.
Oh, very good. And we'll put that on Truth for Our Time Facebook page as well. And again, the archives are always available at Tamara Scott Live on YouTube.com. And website quick to follow as soon as I get my job done. Ryan's done his very well. We're going to go to a break right now. We'll be right back after these messages. You're listening to Tamara Scott Live with Truth for Our Time.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Thanks for staying tuned. I am Tamara Scott. You are either listening on webcast1.com, webcast1live.com, webcast1live.com. You can watch live. You can be part of the show on the chat line Wednesdays at 10 a.m., or you're following along on our new station 99.3, and we're so pleased to be able to reach you through that. If you want information from the show, we'll post it on Truth for Our Time Facebook page, and the archives, like I said, are Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. Teresa Downing is my guest, and she had just given her email out, Downing, DOWNING. Terry is TERRI @gmail.com. Downing Terry @gmail.com. The website for information is Iowa. It is spelled out, Iowa, NAHT. That's the acronym for Network Against Human Trafficking. Iowa, NAHT.org. Network Against Human Trafficking. Pleased to have that network right here in Iowa. We also have some good news for you. And so, Terry, let's go ahead and share the good news with them. We were at the governor's office yesterday for a bill signing, or a bill re-signing, since he got his business done before the holiday, July 4th. It was another human trafficking bill. Now, we were able to pass one in 2012. Danny Carroll, myself, Eric Tabor from the Attorney General's office, Chuck Hurley, and I don't know if you were involved behind the scenes on that one as well. There was a lot of work going on. A lot of you. And we were able to get that legislation passed. That was just the door open, a creak of a door opening. Yesterday was significant, but again, it's only a beginning. Tell us if you know what this bill did.
I'd be glad to, Tamara. Senate File 510 was passed by the House and Senate, and I just would like to start by expressing thanks to all of our legislators and also to the governor for signing it and making this funding to combat
both
human
parties.
trafficking.
We had friends both sides of the aisle on this issue.
We did. And passionate friends on both sides of the aisle who are still working to make sure that we effectively combat this crime. What did we accomplish with Senate File 510?
We opened the door further, but it's still just a door opening. But tell us, we categorized the felonious act of involving human trafficking in a first-degree forcible felony. That's huge.
That is huge. And for your listeners out there, that since it is now classified as a forcible felony, that means that offenders have to serve 70% of their maximum sentence prior to becoming eligible for parole. So no, there's really very little getting off for good behavior on this one once someone is incarcerated for this heinous crime. Another really important point is that the legislature established a Human Trafficking Enforcement Fund in the Department of Justice, and they are going to transfer funding from the Mortgage Settlement Fund into this fund in order to fund training for law enforcement, members of the state patrol, county attorneys, judicial officers, juvenile court officers, and our 911 dispatchers as well. So that's very exciting that we're going to see many of our critical justice professionals and law enforcement professionals trained in Iowa, and not only ready to identify the crime when it occurs, but also to rescue victims and make sure that the perpetrators are held accountable for their behavior.
And the reason I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck Hurley really, really pushed this legislation. I will give hats off to Chuck Hurley. Danny Carroll knows so much of the underground work that needs to take place, being a former speaker pro tem. And I know you had a team of people that I probably haven't even met yet behind the scenes as well. But they pushed this because prosecutors were saying we're not able to get convictions because of either lack of information, wrong questions asked at the arrest.
Yes.
So this will help those folks you just mentioned, one, know what to ask for, know the questions to ask, and know what they need to do to secure a better chance of a full prosecution. Mm-hmm. And you and I have talked about this. We're not saying to decriminalize the prostitute, but we've got to start going after the pimp.
Yes.
Because otherwise they just move to a new location, get a new crop of victims, and go again.
Yes, absolutely. We would not have the crime of human trafficking if not for demand. And we have demand in Iowa for purchasing children, youth, and young adult of all ages. I would say that in Iowa, there is demand for children as young as infancy on up through young adulthood.
Everybody in their car just on the way home from church. I was just sure they didn't hear that right. A demand for infants in Iowa.
Yes. I recently met online a young woman who had been trafficked in Iowa from the age of 2. And she was trafficked for many years of her life until she was identified and rescued. And she said that she saw infants being raped and used for pornography while she herself was being victimized by traffickers who were part of what I would call a pedophile trafficking ring here in our state.
So everyone listening, they're grieved. What do they do to help? What do we need listeners out there to do?
Well, I would say, Tamara, that it's awesome that we passed this legislation. It's awesome that we have nearly $1 million worth of funding now to go towards combating this crime and educating our law enforcement and judicial officials about this crime. But we have a long way to go as a public in terms of standing behind our law enforcement officials, right, including our sheriffs, including our police chiefs, standing behind our justice officials, in particular our county attorneys, judges, and juvenile court officers, and communicating to them that we want you now to enforce Iowa's laws. We need you to do that. We expect you to do that. You are in service to the public, and we demand that you enforce our laws. And the reason I'm coming out so strongly with that statement is that historically in Iowa and around our nation, young people found in prostitution have been re-victimized by the courts and criminalized, whether they are domestic minors or whether they are young adults who are under the control of traffickers. So what we have then typically is people who are found in prostitution stings and investigations as to their possible victimization do not happen.
Okay. This has been a lot for those of you who are listening today. If you want more information, you can always contact us at Truth for Our Time, our Facebook page. You can get a hold of us as well through this radio station that you're listening to. Also, the Downing Terry at gmail.com, the IowaNAHT.org website. We're out of time here. I apologize for not getting more information to you more easily, but the beauty of this show is we get it to you, and what you do with it is your responsibility. You can always find more, or you can choose to do nothing, but you'll be held accountable for which action you take. And so we get you the truth when the headlines hit home, and we give you the equipment to take it forward. And what you do with that, I encourage you to make a difference for those around you. You've been encouraged. Now never be complacent.